Hello. This week I'm going to be taking a look at these two buildings. Now, you may remember these from an unboxing I did a few weeks back. And at the time, I thought they really looked the part and everything. But obviously now that I've actually come to prepare them for the table, I've had more of a longer look at them, and and I'm being fair to the chap. It's Warfayre, and that's Warfayre. It's a chap on eBay that I bought these from, and I have had a discussion with him about some of the little anomalies that I've found, and I'm sure some of them are just you know it's just the way it's come out on my model, and he's going to look at a few of them. And to be fair, he was a nice chap, and some of the problems that I mentioned to him, he did offer to reprint some of the internal parts, which I thought was really fair of him, and come up with some ways to work around some of the little issues that I've found. But as I said to him, a lot of them I can work around it myself, but I think, in the interest of being fair to you, because you're watching, I've got to point out that there are a few issues that I just didn't notice until I was preparing to paint them. I mean, just ignore this brick bit that I've started doing, because I'd started that once I primed it. And for whatever reason, I'd overlooked a few issues, so I'm going to have to reverse back now and start again. So let me just talk you through a few of the little things that I had a problem with and how I've overcome it. Right, the first one is on this building. And basically what it was, you've got your internal stairways there, and that has to line up with the hole in the top, to give, the idea that the troops can come up them steps and through into this floor. Now the thing was, and the chap himself said it was weird because he'd not had it on any of his other prints. For some reason, this one that I've now cut, that one where the stairs are, I've cut that through because it was blanked. It was, as thick as the plastic. There was no hole there at all. And yet over here, in the wrong place, there was a hole for the stairs where there are no stairs below it. So basically, what I've had to do is I've cut through this with a Dremel, and then I've used the bit that I cut out and some green stuff to fill the other hole where it had done it. As I say, the chap looked at it with me, and he even showed me his drawings, and it showed the hole in the right place. So why his printer had a bit of a fit on that day, I don't know. But as I said to him, I'm happy to live with it because I can get round it by filling it in. I'm still not entirely sure what this process is called. I think I originally described it as 3D printing, but it's something slightly different because it appears to like print it in strings almost, which you can see in some of the places. There's probably a name for this, but I'm sorry, I'm ignorant of it. I don't know what that would be. I just called it 3D printing because it was plastic, but it's clearly something a little bit different than that. Maybe if anybody's got an idea, you can put it in the, drop it in a comment below. But I've tidied up most of that, but you can see some of the bands there, look. And some of them are loose, so I've peeled those off. So that's the nature of it. Now, the other issue is in places you can see the makeup of how it is produced coming through the surface. Now, it isn't a major issue because obviously with some of that, you could use it as just the texture of the wall, and you know that it's been, what's the word for it? You know, like plastered over, and so it's just the effect of that. But there are other areas where it kind of pops through, and it does show up quite badly, and then it looks a bit strange. It's more so on the other one than it is on this one. The only other slight issue with that one was the internal piece. I had to trim it a bit because it was too tight going in. It's a shame, but then, you know, it wasn't something that I can't overcome. This one, this had quite a bigger problem in a way because it was harder to get to. It wasn't in the hole was in the right place on this one. It was here because basically, and I think you can even see it in some of the photos in the unboxing, the internal floor, and I checked, you know, in case I'd got the internal floors mixed up, and I hadn't. For some reason, this one was sitting, if I can show you it, like that, so you could see a gap underneath the floor, and the floor wasn't sitting flush like it should, like that. It was up here. And again, you know, the chap himself, he couldn't throw any light on that, why that would have been the case. In the end, and this one was a bit more trouble, but I've got round it. It turned out that all these internal walls at the bottom that are fixed, you know, you can't take them out, was slightly too high. So I've had to use a Dremel to try and trim them and grind them down a bit. And, you know, it looks a bit rough as it is, but I mean, I haven't painted over it much here at the minute. But that's because the nature, you can't get in to finish it the way you would like to. But it has took that level down, and now, as you can see, when I put the floor in, it sits right. You know, there's no gap. You can walk straight in through these balcony doors. And the difference that it made was, when it was raised too high, like that, if you had a troop standing at that doorway, his head was above the window line. So just taking it down from there to there has now made that right. So I just thought I'd got to point those issues out. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still pleased with the buildings, but you know, it's only fair, if I'm going to be neutral about it, to point out that I did have those issues. And then the other one is, as I said to you, about the manufacture grain. Not so bad on this one, but on this one, look, you can see that is not something that's going to hide with just paint. I've painted it a couple of times, and you can see, you know, where it's built up in bands. You can see all the band lines coming through, and it's not everywhere, it's certain places. So, you know, it's really bad by the side of that window. Look, you can see that. So, you know, on this one particular, although I'll probably end up doing it on this one as well, purely to make them match, I'm going to have to come up with something a bit more than just painting it. So what I'm thinking of doing is mixing up some grout and glue and, you know, actually giving it a coat of that. So, you know, that will make it all uniform, and it'll just look like it's been texturized. You know, I'm not going to add any grit or anything to it, so it'll just be the texture of the grout itself. But that'll give it some uniformity and bring that back. So obviously it set me back a little bit, but I've got to take it back to this stage before I can work forward. Now, with the internals on this, I'm going to go for some wallpapers as well. So where I've got that effect on the inside, that'll be pretty much hidden by the wallpaper and any paintwork that I have to do. So that's the issues that I've found with it. And to be fair, the chaps offered me a 20% discount on any future purchases, you know, just because of the hiccups that I've had. So you can't argue with that. Anyway, negatives aside, let's see what we can do with these buildings. Right, so I've mixed up some of this tile grout with an equal measure of glue, and made sure that I've got it thoroughly blended. And then what I'm going to do, if I pick the worst one first for finish, which I think is this one, that one out of the way. And now I'm going to just paint it on here. I won't make it too thick, but obviously I've got to make it so it's not so thin that it will start showing through again. But I don't think that'll be the case, because obviously once this is on and then I've painted it, it should be fine. And this will set really hard, so that's going to give it a lot better finish. Right, so what I'll do is I'll get this one coated and then I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like. Right, so I've given this the coat now all over to give it a bit of a rendered finish, and that'll hide any of them imperfections that I was talking about. It's already starting to dry. In fact, the other one has dried. And what I'm doing now, because obviously the grout was a brown colour, I'm going over it, but I'm also using, just for a bit of extra protection, you know, so it don't get knocked, with some Mod Podge mixed with a magnolia type paint to bring that back. Obviously it's not covered it completely yet, but that'll blank it out for when I start the actual painting job, and that'll bring more back to where I can start again then. So I've just got to do the bottom piece on this one and then paint the other one. So, oh, and then of course there's the top pieces as well that I need to paint up. So I'll get them done and then I'll bring you back. Right, so I've got these back to where I need them to be now. I've obviously the coat dried out with all the grout mix on, and that's gave it a textured finish. And I've sealed that with some Mod Podge as well, and then repainted it so I can touch up the bricks and everything now. The other thing that I decided to do while I was at that early stage is there was a very squared off, unnatural looking top to this one. So I've cut all of that off. I might keep some of it as debris actually, but I think it looks better now. It matches the other one more as well. Yeah, it's got a nice textured finish always round, so you can't see any of those lines anymore. They've gone. So, you know, back to the basics now, and I can start again. So the next stage I'm going to be doing is I'm going to dry paint these front bricks as I had them originally, and just retouch up the top ones as well where I've caught it with some of the paint. And then I'm going to switch to looking at the internals on these ones. So I'll bring you back soon. Right, so the next thing that I've been doing is the actual pattern that this material is printed in, however it's manufactured, works quite well for the floors, and it looks, you know, like block flooring when you've painted it. So I've gone for a brown finish on all the floors, and it seems to have gone on fairly well, and the same with the stairs. What I'm doing now is on the internals on this one, I'm going to go for something a bit different. I'm going to do some wallpapering. And so what I've done is I've gone on the internet and I've actually got a fair few 1940s style patterns, and then I've miniaturised them and printed them off in strips, you know, by just adding it together. And so what I'm doing now is cutting it to fill the bottom floor. This is the paper I'm going with in the hallway, and I've just cut another piece now that I'll be putting up to the stairs. So I'll glue that in place, and I'll do a bit more, and when I get to the top floors you'll be able to see it a lot better. Right, so as I just played a trick on my daughter, she just rang and asked me what I was doing. So I told her I'd been completely redecorating the house, and she fell for it. So anyway, I've wallpapered the inside of the house. Just bring a light over so you can see it. As you can see, it's not a perfect job. At first I was getting quite uptight about, I've not got that right, or I've torn a corner off. And then I remembered, what am I actually doing? I'm building a house for bolt action, and it's where troops are going to take cover. So, you know, I'm not looking to please a customer with my wallpapering. It's quite acceptable for there to be rips and tears, because it is in a battlefield. So that's, I've matched that obviously to the rooms that it's in. And painted the odd ones. I didn't see the point in wallpapering that, so I thought I'd paint that. And obviously, you know, seriously, you know, the bits where I've ripped it, or I've deliberately ripped it, that's where I'm going to be applying water washes and all sorts coming down the walls. You know, if you're going to go down this route, I'm not saying it's for everybody, the important thing is not to worry too much about the finish. You know, get it basically right. If you've got rips and tears, you're going to be able to cover that with, you know, all the weathering and stuff like that you're going to do to it, and damage. You know, because you've got to remember it is just a playing piece. So I've done that. I mean, it's probably took me about an hour or something messing around in between. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do exactly the same on the other one, and that'll be the slow part over, really, because then it's just a matter of starting to apply some damage inside and outside, and some weathering. So I'm going to leave that one to dry, get onto the other one, and then I'll bring you back. Right, so I've completed the wallpapering process. As you can see, I've even done it on the top floor. I've torn off the edges and made bits of damage on it here and there, but now it's going to be a matter of painting this up and you know, adding some runs and weathering and things to it. Same in the houses. The upper floor and the lower floor have all been papered. So the first thing I'm going to need to do, I think the best way to tackle it is to start from the bottom and work up. So what I'm going to be doing first is adding any damage that I want to the inside, which obviously because it's a floor down it's going to be fairly minimal. I might put in a little bit of furniture just to represent, you know, that it was lived in. I don't want to put too much because I don't want to hinder placing any men in there. So I don't think it's, you know, particularly, you know, needed. So it'll just be the odd item really, just to suggest that it's a lived-in space. And then I work up to the second floor, which will then be these, and then finally them, and then the outside at the very end. Right, so I'll clear my desk, and I'm going to start by making up a few little bits of debris and furniture and bricks and things like that in readiness to start, you know, building it in. So I'll be back shortly. So I took a little bit of time out again to make a few little bits and bobs out of, you know, my leftover bits of Sarissa sprue. So I've made up myself a selection of brown furniture, a cabinet and a couple of bookshelves, some tables and chairs. Oh, and a little mangle, which has got plastic lollipop sticks for the actual rollers. And then I've made a couple of beds. They're not necessarily all going to be in position, but I can tip them over or put them in bits where the troops aren't, just to make it look a bit more dressed up. I may or may not use all of this, but I wanted to get it prepared so I could just get on with dressing the building. And I made up a few sandbags as well out of the DAS clay, and some more of the corrugated iron, which I've rusted up, and some more bottles. And then the other thing that I've done is I've made up some more of the shattered glass that I used in a previous video, and some more brick dust. And then obviously I've got my bricks as well. But this will allow me to just dress up little bits of the buildings to make it, you know, I don't want to put anything in the way of where the troops need to be, but I do want it to look like it was a little bit lived in at least. So I'm just going to let the last of these dry off, and then I'm going to start to look at the buildings again. So I'll be back in a second. I'm going to start by putting a few sandbags along this balcony. The troops can't actually get out onto the balcony because obviously their bases are too big, but they can fire through it. So I think this will help, you know, to make it look like they're using the balcony by having a bit of a sandbag wall. And hopefully if they're shooting out through the window, this will help to make it look a bit more effective. Right, so that's looking more complete. And then the only other thing that I've done on this one so far is I've put a little table, whether you can see it, a table and the mangle in that back room, where, to be fair, I probably wouldn't use it for troops because there's no windows or anything in that bit, so it seemed a good place to have a bit of the furniture that would be out of the way. So I'm just adding some little bits to the second floor now. I just put a little bookshelf in there with a cup and saucer on it. I can't put too much of this on these floors because obviously I need the room for the troops to be shooting out through the windows. So I'm just putting odd bits here and there at the moment. There might be more room on the top floor to actually push some bigger bits in, but for now I'm just focusing on areas that realistically a troop couldn't get into, so it still gives the appearance of it being dressed, but it doesn't get in the way. Right, so I'll press on now. What I'll do is I'll take some photographs as I go along. Adding debris to the windows is quite effective, especially when they're low windows. And again, you know, little items like bottles. The bigger debris, I'm trying to lean against the wall to keep the floor space clear. Same with bricks, really, just keep them out of the way. And the glass, there's no problem because it's flat and troops can stand on it. The bigger bits of furniture, I put them in little rooms that are not used. Same with the wrought iron, corrugated iron. It's good as a barrier. Little bits and bobs to bring the furniture to life. And just a bit of graffiti there. Thought it might be the kind of thing the troops would do. All of it just really helps to tell a bit of a story. And what they've done is they've grabbed bits and put them, you know, wherever they can use them, really. Just whatever's at hand. And the walls and everything need to be weathered to look more beaten. And that's where, you know, like water penetration and stains come in. Because they're things that add character, but they don't interfere with anything. And the dust and debris, I try and keep it round the edges of the room. So, you know, it all brings the story to life. The important thing is to make everything look like it's come through a battle. And, you know, where you need the space, I just go for stains. And that applies as much as anything to the outside of the building because you can't have it shiny white. The dust that I'm adding is basically meant to represent plaster coming down from the ceiling, you know, from the impacts above. And, you know, all-round weathering for the building is to make it blend in with, you know, the battlefield as it would be, you know, with dust and debris and smoke and damage here and there. You know, stuff that's going to just make it look, you know, like there's a lot been going on here. It's important to make all the entries and the windows and everything also look fairly grimy because obviously the glass is out, so they've been exposed to the weather, particularly the outside brickwork. Right, so they're finally completed, and well, I say completed. I need to seal them and everything yet, but as you can see, there'll still be bits moving around because I've not sprayed the sealant on it. But just to show you how it's looking at the moment, what I've tried to do is make barriers against some of the windows where they were revealing too much of a troop stood behind it, and just basically tried to make it look like the soldiers had grabbed, you know, whatever they had to hand to try and block gaps off and things. And obviously the washes to, you know, just to show the overall mess that's inside there from the, you know, the actual damage itself, from water damage and all sorts. So, and then on the second floor, I've just kept it fairly simple to leave enough room for the troops to walk round. As you can see, just like a bit of dust and debris that's fell down from the roof above it. Bit of graffiti. And the shards of glass. And I've took that right to the bottom, but inside I've kept it fairly simple. Just little bits of furniture. Little bits of water penetration damage. You know, where it's come from above, because there's no roof. And the same with the other one. You know, Again, made a bit of a block against the window with a mattress and some bricks and some sandbags. You know, basically to make it look like it's being done ad hoc with whatever's at hand. And again, just showing water damage and the dirt and debris from, you know, all the different gunfire that's come their way, artillery fire. And I've just, the bigger furniture, because I don't want to take up valuable room for the troops, I've just, like the bed, I've upturned it and pushed it against the wall so it's out the way. And then they've obviously snatched the mattress and pushed it up against that window for a bit more cover. Again, inside on this one, made it fairly simple, just debris from the roof above, you know, where there's been an impact and there's plaster fell down. Again, very small amounts of furniture, just things to give it a bit of atmosphere. And I've carried that right through to the bottom where, you know, there's very little in there, so there's plenty of room for the troops to get in. Because at the end of the day, these are the main houses that are occupied near the bridge, so I didn't want to take up too much room with the debris, because I need to get my armies in there. Let's put it that way around. I'd probably put them, you know, side by side on the bridge. Well, not that way round. Be this way around. So, like that. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take those away and get them sealed, and I'll perhaps leave you with some closing shots with some of the men in place so you can get an imagination for what it looks like, what it will look like in game. Right, I'll just clear my desk, get that done, and then I'll bring you back for the photographs. Right, so here they are, all sealed now, nothing's moving anymore. And brought some troops in to just give it a bit of a feel for what it'd be like on a battlefield. You can see them just poking out through the windows. The roof looks particularly effective now, I'm quite happy with that. There's lots of great positioning opportunities. And the inside, as I said before, I've kept it fairly simple and straightforward, just so there's space to bring the troops in and go up the floors. That's the important thing. To be fair, you don't need a lot in there really, just the suggestion to bring it to life. Right, well I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found something useful that you can perhaps do with your own projects, even if you just take a little bit of it. If you have enjoyed it, please consider giving me a thumbs up, or drop me a comment if you want to ask anything. And why not subscribe so you get to see the next video drop. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.